Hello everyone. So, in this video, pag-usapan natin yung effective leadership behaviors. So, paano ba dapat magbe-behave yung isang leader in times of sabihin nating distress, in times of normal circumstances, in times of emergency. And what are those effective leadership behaviors? O paano maging effective yung leadership mo bilang ikaw ay maghahawak ng isang team sa barko. Alam naman natin, lahat ng crew, iba't ibang lahi yan, iba't iba ng culture. Paano ka dapat mag-behave sa harap, for example, ng isang Greek, sa harap ng isang Polish guy, or isang Indian, Sri Lankan, and most especially sa kapwa natin Pinoy. Okay? So, ano ba yung effective leadership behavior? Una nating pag-usapan is about cultural awareness. Kasi hindi lahat ng crew sa barko ay iisa. They are made of various beliefs from different nations and cultures. They are diverse, iba-iba sila with different backgrounds, but with one goal. Their goal is to do their job, to have a safe life on board, to finish their contract, and to go back home to their families and loved ones. Iba't ibang nationality, pero isang goal. And to be a good leader of whatever race, the leader should understand the cultures and underlying behaviors of their crew in terms of being a leader, a follower, or just even a crewmate. We have levels of cultural awareness. The first level is my way is the only way, or you are ignoring the impact of cultural difference. Kumbaga, old school leader ka. Pag sinabi mo, yun yung batas, yun na yung masusunod. Kumbaga, kung anong sabihin mo, yun ang masusunod kasi my way is the only way. Pag sinabi mo, istrebor lang tayo, istrebor lang tayo. Okay? Another level of cultural awareness is I know their way, but my way is better. So, kumbaga, parang old school pa rin to na parang nagde-develop na kasi alam mo yung way ng isang culture o alam mo yung way kung paano gawin ng isang grupo yung trabaho pero iisipin mo pa rin na yung galawan mo o yung way mo na magtatrabaho is mas better pa rin sa kanila. And then another level is my way and their way. So kumbaga, aalamin mo yung technique, aalamin mo yung galawan ng ibang culture, ng ibang kultura, ng ibang lahi. And then isasama mo naman yan, ipagko-combine mo yan doon sa galawan mo. So, paano ba yung my way and their way? Okay? So, isipin mo muna, paano ba magawa itong trabaho na to? Paano ba ang trabaho ng Indiano? Paano ba ang trabaho ng Sri Lankan? And then, paano ang trabaho ng Pinoy? So, isasama mo siya. At ang pinakamagandang level of cultural awareness is our way. You will generalize as a leader, paano ba gawin ng isang lahi itong trabaho, paano gawin ng isang lahi yung trabaho, and then pagsasamahin mo yung technique nila, pagsasamahin mo yung way of working nila with each other, that's why it will lead to teamwork. So to increase cultural awareness, you should have understanding of different cultures to treat them well and not offend them. The leader should know the limit of their humor and to know if there will be any underlying effect that may reach the receiver of the information wrong, that may offend them and affect the harmonious relationship on board. Kaya meron tayong tinatawag na study ng cultural awareness kasi baka pag nagjo-joke tayo, na-offend na siya kasi baka sa kultura nila masama yun, no? So, for example, ang culture ng mga Romanians, kasi I have been with Romanians o Romanian officer, so ayaw sila natatawaging mga sir. Dito sa atin, sa Pilipinas, sa mga kapwa natin Pinoy, okay lang na sir yung tawag. Pero sa Romanians or sa mga Romano, ang tinatawag mo lang na sir sa kanila is yung knights. Okay? So, yung knights, yung alam natin na may kabayo, na may espada, Yun, knights na recognized ng queen. Okay, so sila lang yung mga sir. So, sila, tawagin mo lang sila kung anong gusto nila or kaya naman ay tawagin mo sila by their rank. For example, chief, second, or third. Kapag third mate, second mate, mga ganon. Okay? So, ganun din ang mga Spanish. So, don't call them sir if they are officers because for them, it is only for the knights. Okay? So, sa mga ganun, no? So, pag kayo pilit ng pilit kayo makulit, okay, doon na sila ma-offend. Okay, doon na sila magagalit. So, you have to increase your cultural awareness by studying their culture. So, to know this or to heighten your cultural awareness, you should know the cultural difference. So, by knowing the cultural difference can be a problem when the organization needs people to think or act in a similar way. It also confusing and it can make agreement difficult to reach. And knowing the cultural difference also can become an advantage when organization expands and it can have different approaches for solutions and it can also create valuable new skills and behavior. So, minsan, nagkakaroon tayo ng mga problema in understanding the cultural difference. For example, mahirap kasi yung basta-basta ka na lang magtatanong. Like, sa mga Hindu, sino si Buddha? O kaya naman, minsan, anong culture or anong culture ng mga Indians or mga Sri Lankans yung nagpapasko at hindi. Mga ganun. Okay? Kasi minsan, yung mga Sri Lankans daw, meron dyan na culture na hindi nagpapasko. Yung iba naman, nagpapasko. Okay? O kaya naman, for example, mga Muslim on board, so wag mo naman silang papaikutin ng lechon kapag maglilechon kayo. Okay? So, igalang naman natin yung cultural difference. So when we become culturally aware, we realize that we are not all the same. Okay? Hindi tayo pare-parehas na tayo magkakaiba. Similarities and differences are both important and there are multiple things to live the life. Siyempre, kung sa tingin mo ay yung way mo ng pamumuhay ay okay na, but inside your culture, malalaman mo pala na meron pang ibang way ng pamumuhay and different problems have different solutions. There is a way in managing cultural difference. First is recognize it. Recognize ano ba yung culture ng kasama mo. Okay? So, recognize it and then after you recognize, learn not to fear it. So, wag kang lalayo. Kumbaga, ang mga Pinoy pala kaibigan yan eh. So, learn not to fear it. Kumbaga, if may nakasama kang Pakistani na talaga naman na napaka-relihiyoso, okay? Magtitirik yan ng kandila doon sa kanyang kabina, tapos magsisindi yan. Make sure na sabihan mo na bawas-bawasan naman yung pagsindi niya ng kandila. That's why you will increase your self-awareness and increase your cross-cultural awareness. Kasi minsan mangyayari dyan sa sobrang madasali ng mga yan, yung usok ng kandila nila maaabot doon sa fire detector, sa smoke detector. Kaya minsan delikado din. Pero wala tayong magagawa doon kasi yun yung culture niya. Pero pwede natin siyang sabihan na keep it on a minimum para sa safety ng barko. Certain attitudes help to bridge cultures. Okay, for example, tayo nga mga Pinoy, madali tayo mag-adapt sa culture ng iba. Palakaibigan tayo. And admit that you don't know. And by admitting, of course, you can know the different culture, assume differences, not similarities. You can suspend judgment. Siyempre, may hindi natin magiging judgmental kasi alam na natin yung way of living nila. We will empathize. We can systematically check our assumptions. Hindi na tayo basta-basta nagja-judge kasi alam na natin yung culture ng kausap natin. And we can become comfortable with ambiguity or na-appreciate natin yung interpretation sa iba't ibang culture na makakasalamuhan natin on board. So with this, we have the cultural will. Okay? So in managing or increasing your cultural awareness, you should understand, respect, learn the culture, interpret the culture, explain by yourself kung bakit sila ganon, dapat naiintindihan mo siya. Ano ba yung mga procedure na, let's say, for example, procedure kung paano matatanggap yung culture niya. Kumbaga, hindi mo na lang papapansinin o kakaibiganin mo siya o sasamahan mo siya and dapat consistent ka. Hindi yung papakita mo lang na okay, gantong ganyan kasi makakasama mo yan ng matagal sa barko. Pinakamatagal na siguro yung 1 taon sa barko. Maliban na lang kung may COVID. Kasi for your information, tumatagal po ngayon ng tao sa barko ng mahigit 1 year. Kasi gawa ng mahirap ngayong crew change, napapanahon kasi gawa nga ng COVID. Mahirap mag-join ngayon at mahirap ding bumaba sa barko. Other cultures have what we call the power distance. So, ano ba yung power distance? This refers to the relationship between those in power and the subordinates in a society where lower ranking individuals, depending on the high or low power distance culture, react to that authority. So, we have the power distance index. It is a tool to measure the acceptance of power established between the individuals with the greatest power and those with the least. This is an anthropology concept used in cultural studies to understand the relationship between individuals with varying power, the effects, and the perception of those individuals. We have the power distance index. This is the extent to which the power differs within the society, organization, and institutions that is accepted by the less powerful members. So it indicates the level of power distance and dependent relationships in a country by assigning a score to each country. The PDI also represents the society's level of inequality that is defined from below rather than from above. So we have high PDI and low PDI. Dun muna tayo sa low PDI cultures. These are the emotional, distance, and relatively small PDI. There are more democratic or consultative relations between expecting and accepting power. People are relatively interdependent to the power holders, and there is relatively low inequality of power distributed among the people. Under these circumstances, the decentralized authority and flat management structure is common, though not universal. It means that both managers and subordinates will, on average, be relatively less concerned with status, and the distribution of decision-making responsibility is extensive. There is also an open door policy, and there is more easily used than elsewhere, which means the individuals in superior positions are not only more likely to be open to listen to those in inferior positions, but subordinates are also more likely to be willing to challenge or give suggestions to their superiors. For example, in this culture, if one wants to get promotion, one will refer to get their ideas across to their boss directly. So, ano ba yung low PDI in simple terms? For example, just like in the United States, kung makikita nyo yung sa mga pelikula, sa mga movies, no, in American movies, there is a always low PDI. So, kung nakikita nyo doon, yung sa mga sundalo, for example, yung lower ranking soldiers, kung makipag-usap sila sa kanilang mga officers, parang tropa-tropa lang nila. Okay? So, ganun ang low PDI. Kapag kahit na meron kang ranking, meron kang may distansya yung boss, there is sometimes wala. Parang tropa-tropa lang kayo. Okay? Pwede mong kausapin yung boss directly na parang katropa mo lang. Ganun ang low PDI. So, malapit sila sa isa't isa. For example, gusto mo nga ma-promote, punta ka sa boss mo, sasabihin mo, gusto kong ma-promote. Anong kailangan kong gawin? Parang ganun. Okay? At ang mga examples ng country with low PDI are Netherlands, United Kingdom, the United States, Germany, and the Nordic countries. Ang kabaliktaran naman ng low PDI, syempre, high PDI. These are cultures in which the power relations are paternalistic and autocratic. So, ito talaga yung pag boss ka talaga. And where there is a centralized authority. In other words, there is a wide gap or emotional distance which is perceived to exist among people at different levels of hierarchy. There is considerable dependence of people on power holders, which in psychology is known as counter-dependence. In the workplace, the subordinates are willing to accept their inferior positions. The boss, in turn, may not ask for broad participation in the decision-making process. Unlike in lower PDI cultures, the open door policy has been replaced by an autocratic leadership style, which means subordinates may be unlikely to approach contradict their bosses directly. For instance, even though employees may want to be promoted, it is entirely their boss' decision and they have no say in it. Sa high PDI naman, just like what we have here in the Philippines, hindi ka basta-basta makakalapit kay boss. Kumbaga dapat magpapabibo ka, magpapansin ka para ma-promote ka. Kasi nga meron tayong high PDI, kumbaga meron tayo ditong chain of command. Hindi ka basta-basta makakaimik kay boss, dadaan ka muna kay manager. Si manager dadaan muna yan kay bisor bago pa makarating kay boss yung gusto mo. Kumbaga, there should be always an approval with one rank high than you or one position higher than you. Generally, countries with high power distance culture hold that there is nothing wrong with inequality and thus everyone could be in specific positions. People in higher positions usually display People in higher positions usually display and promote the use of status symbol in high PDI countries. For example, powerful individuals will not eat lunch at the same cafeteria as people in lower positions. So, nakahiwalay sila kasi meron silang social status symbol. And there are large numbers of supervisors who are entitled to special privileges. So, dito yung mga VIP. Mas namin ito yung VIP talaga, VIP ka talaga. Talagang may gwardiya ka, naka-limousine ka, meron kang bodyguard, meron kang escort. Okay? So, those are in the high PDI culture. So, for example, syempre, dito yan sa Pilipinas. We have in China, Belgium, France, Malaysia, and Arab world, and can be regarded as examples of countries or regions with high PDI cultures. So what is the importance in knowing PDI or power distance index? So dito mo maiintindihan bakit ganon yung pakitungo sa iyo. For example, opisyal ka naman, tapos yung ratings mo, bakit ganon yung pakitungo? Parang walang paggalang. Okay? Yun pala, they are living in low PDI cultures. Kumbaga, parang nandyan lang yung ano mo, nandyan lang yung ranggo mo kasi yun yung trabaho mo. Pero hindi yun dahilan para ituring kang hari. Parang ganon. Okay? So, you should identify the culture, you should understand the PDI or power distance index para hindi ka ma-offend at magkaroon kayo ng harmonious relationships on board. So, Ikaw na mas nakakaalam, ikaw na opisyal, may posisyon ka sa barko, ikaw dapat yung talagang mag-adjust doon sa iyong crew. Another thing that we have to consider is the individualism and the collectivism. So, ano ba yung individualism? So, let's have a comparison individualism versus collectivism. First, there is a focus on the individual, on the individualism. And the collectivism naman, focus sa group. Kumbaga, sa pangangailangan or for example ay sa trabaho, iisipin mo muna na magawa yung trabaho mo. Kumpara mo sa collectivist country na iisipin mo na magawa yung trabaho as a whole. Kumbaga, for example, kung individualistic ka, pag tapos mo na yung trabaho mo, wala na, tapos na. Pero kung collectivist ka, pag tapos mo na yung trabaho mo, tutulong ka sa tropa, tutulong ka sa ibang crew para matapos yung trabaho as a whole. In individualistic culture, the responsibility for themselves and immediate family. Doon naman sa collectivism, responsibility for family and extended family. So, ano naman sample dito? For example, kumbaga, pag matatanda, okay, sa individualism, pag ikaw ay may kamag-anak na patanda, mas ma-appreciate nila kung dadalhin mo sila sa home for the aged. In collectivist country naman, just like dito sa Pilipinas, mas ma-appreciate nila kapag yung matanda is mag stay sa bahay. Kasi pag dadalhin mo yan sa home for the aged, it will be an offending move. Kumbaga, hindi yan maganda sa kultura ng Pinoy. Kasi we are in collectivism. Doon naman sa individualism, we have the management mobility. Sa collectivism naman, we have the employee commitment. Kumbaga, sa individualistic culture, management mobility, kumbaga, kanya-kanya. Ganon. Kumbaga, pag trabaho lang talaga. Pero yung commitment ng employee, nandun yan sa collectivism culture. Next is the separation of private and work life. Sa individualism naman, and sa collectivism, work and private life intermix. So, sa individualism, parang trabaho lang talaga. Trabaho, trabaho lang. Walang personalan. Sa collectivism, iba. Yung personal life, nadadala mo sa trabaho. For example, may problema ka sa pamilya, pwede makaapektuhan yung trabaho. Kung gusto mo siyang iwasan, pero hindi mo kaya. Kasi in collectivism culture, damay-damay na. That is collectivist. Bilang, mamaya titinan natin yung countries. So, in individualistic culture, there is a pleasure from individual achievement. For example, na-promote ka, individualistic ka, okay, ikaw na yun. Ikaw na lang yung masaya. Pero sa collectivism culture, yung achievement mo, kailangan i-celebrate yan. Okay, hahanap ka ng celebration. Kumbaga, dapat may inuman yan kasi na-promote ka. Magpapainom ka, magpahanda ka, kung ano man. Okay? So, and it will require you to have some group kasi you are in the collectivist. So, ano ba yung mga individualistic culture? So, ito yung United States, South Africa, Australia, Germany, and Ireland. And dito naman sa ating collectivist culture, madalas ito sa Asian countries. Siyempre, nangunguna-nguna, pinaka-collectivist is Philippines, followed by Japan, China, Korea, Taiwan, Venezuela, Guatemala, Indonesia, Ecuador, Argentina, Brazil, and India. So, mapapansin natin, yung India, lahat yung mga Indian, they are focused on the family. Sila ay yung nandoon sa family values, family traditions. Kumbaga, family first before self. Yan, ang pinaka-collectivist na culture ng Indians. Another leadership is leadership in emergencies. An emergency on board is a situation where in life of person on board the vessel cargo, and the marine environment is at risk. Fire and ship's abandonment are main emergencies on board that have a monthly drill to practice every scenario that may happen. In every drill, the officer in charge of a team will be trained so that he or she will be ready in an event of real emergency. A fire team is led by a junior officer on deck and a senior officer on the engine room. They should practice judgment, skill, and leadership in a quickly and passive manner. In dealing with emergencies on board, every personnel is assigned to a specific task that is indicated in the master list. Key personnel are identified to man every station and to make sure that every crew is complete and accounted for. In dealing with the emergencies, the master will stay at the bridge and will keep in touch only by walkie-talkie radio to the site. Being a team leader in an emergency, he or she must be responsible in taking these decisions on how to solve the problem and guiding the team on how to approach the problem. If you are the leader in an emergency, wag naman sana na ikaw yung kauna-unahang magpapanik. Okay? Dapat hindi ikaw yon. Kasi ikaw yung leader, ikaw yung magdadala ng iyong team para yung emergency, yung problema, masolve. So, it will require training, it will require experience for you to handle every emergency on board. Another emergency na dapat i-manage mo ay yung kailangan may tao. Okay? For example, if you will be on board a passenger cruise or a passenger vessel, kailangan marunong ka ng crowd and crisis management. Or it is handling or controlling emergency that a group of people may be in peril or a crowd may be in peril, just like a scenario in a passenger ship. The officer in charge or a person in charge of a certain master station of passengers should have a leadership skill to lead the passengers and make them follow what is needed to do. In order to control the scenario, the one in charge should understand how the brain works or to understand the person's behavior in a dangerous situation. So how the brain works in a dangerous situation? We have the reptile brain and we have the controlling brain. So, ito yung parts ng brain. Okay, sa psychology muna tayo with anatomy. Okay, sa crowd and crisis. First, reptile brain. So, this is the oldest part of the brain, wherein in this part, the brain is generated the thoughts of a person that will lead him or her to fear, anger, fear, and to have survival instincts. Push the body to act, to move more agile than normal, or even change the attitude. So in times of emergency, bakit ikaw hihina-hina ka? Tapos maya-maya, pag umapoy na, for example, bigla-bigla nabuhat mo yung malaking ref. Okay? May ganon. So, kumbaga, meron tayong adrenaline rush. Kasi, your reptile brain or the oldest part of the brain is acting, nasasabi sa'yo, umalis ka dyan. Umaapoy na, buhatin mo yung ref. Okay? Kasi kailangan makasurvive yung ref. Kasi yan yung kauna-unahan mo na pundar. Parang mga ganon. Okay? So, that is your reptile brain that is saying you to do that. But we have the controlling brain or the younger part of the brain, and this brain develops the logic of thinking and controlling the attitude or composure of a person. This part of the brain controls the reptile brain. For example, sabi ni reptile brain, magpanik ka. Move in circles. Run. Parang mga ganon. Sabi naman ni controlling brain, no, you have to compose yourself. Kailangan, kalmado ka lang. Huwag mong buhatin yung ref mag-isa. Kaya yan, dalawa. Parang mga ganon. No. So, si controlling brain, kinokontrol na yung reptile brain. Kumbaga, siya yung taga-kontra. Siya yung magsasabi sa'yo na dapat kalmado ka lang. Kalmahan mo lang. Okay? Isip ka ng mas magandang approach to solve the problem. That is your controlling brain. You should also, being a officer, you should also recognize stress. So ano ba yung stress? Stress is what makes us become irritable and make us not think straight and will affect making decision. Solving the problem, hardly, o nahihirapan kang mag-decide kasi stress ka na. In recognizing stress, one can easily distinguish it by observation of sudden change in behavior. There is an acceleration in movement, the expectations become certainty, and there is a tunnel vision, and there is concentration on irrelevant details. So kung stress ka na, wala ka nang focus. Kumbaga kung ano nakikita mo, yun lang. Hindi mo nakikita, for example, dapat nakikita mo yung importanteng mga bagay. Pero, ang nakikita mo, yung mga bagay na walang kwenta. For example, nabuhat mo yung ref, hindi naman yan yung talagang mahalaga. Okay? Dapat ang bubuhatin mo sana dyan, yung mga papeles mo, yung mga lisensya mo. Ganon, hanapin mo dapat yan. Okay? So, kasi, stress ka na. Kung anong makita mo, yun na. Another is handling stress. So, syempre, na-recognize mo na yung stress now is handle the stress. To handle the stress, there are few things to do or to exercise to diminish the feeling of stress. There should be a mental rehearsal or anticipation. The thinking should be realigned to have a clearer view of the scenario. Breathing exercise should be executed too to promote relaxation. After relaxing, people should be extracted to slow down and not act hastily. So, in recognizing stress in crowd and crisis management, kailangan pag nakikita mo yung tao stress na, sasabihin mo, okay, relax lang po tayo. Breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale. Ito po yung gagawin natin. Punta po kayo doon. So, dapat, ikaw being a leader, being an officer, dapat ikaw yung kauna-unahang kakalma. Okay? So, knowing all of this information from culture, PDI, crowd and crisis management, dapat alam na natin from these informations, dito tayo kukuha ng kung paano ba tayo dapat maging leader in a certain situation and how should we behave being a leader in a certain situation. This is your instructor in this course, Leadership and Teamwork, Sir Melvin. Thank you.